So first of all, thank you all for coming and let's get started. So why did I choose El Museo del Niño? Well, one of my main reasons is my personal connection to it. You see, I used to live in Puerto Rico when I was younger, and me and my family would visit pretty often. So I have a lot of fond memories of being in the museum. Secondly, the concept of a museum dedicated to children sounded like a great creative outlet. For those who don't know, El Museo del Niño is a children's museum that has many interactive learning exhibits for children, as well as fun activities for groups and families. Now we're going to get into what I like to call the planning phase. So an integral part of the designing process is knowing your audience. The demographics for the museum are predominantly middle-class families with varying ages. Since this presentation is more focused on the designing aspect of creating a website, this section will be more of a general overview of the main consumers. So for El Museo del Niño, the audience is pretty mixed because the parents are the primary consumers for the website, yet the kids are the primary consumers of the museum. So the website needs to appeal to adult design preferences while also advertising the fact that it is for kids. This all translates into design choices. The main colors for the websites are going to be primary colors such as red, yellow, green, and blue. The images chosen are going to be centered around the museum and families with younger kids having fun. This would advertise to the parents that it is a fun environment for the whole family. In terms of text, the fonts are going to be smooth and playful in order to keep it a childlike aesthetic while also not being too overwhelming. And right there, you can see a mood board. Mood boards really do help in the designing process, just break down the whole aesthetic you want for the website. So you know, like the types of fonts you're going to use, the colors, images, and just the overall feel. So that's why I felt like it was important to share that, because it's one of the first things you do when you design a website. So this is the original website. This is how it looks right now. As you can see in the top left corner, the homepage is very crowded and overwhelming. While it does have some important information like the hours of operation and contact info, it should not all be placed in the homepage. A homepage is usually reserved with beautiful visuals that capture your attention and make you want to know more. I felt like the website overall really just had too much going on, and it could have easily been just condensed more. Now, time for the implementation process. So my biggest inspiration is MoMA, specifically their homepage part. So what I really like about it is the way their boxes, with color, match the images. It just makes everything look super colorful, organized, and spaced out. It was just, I feel like, a really creative take, and it was something I wanted to mimic. And you'll see how I implement that throughout. So first, I started doing some wireframe sketches for the homepage. The purpose of a wireframe is to simply simplify the structure of a website to its basic elements. For example, you see the X's right here represent images, and the red lines in both this one and this one represent just titles. The same with the smaller blue lines, they represent just smaller text. After doing the sketches, I made a more official wireframe, which you can see right there. As you can see, I moved the navigator from being in the header to now it being vertical. Again, these are all just more prototypes, so it's okay to redesign as you go along. You don't need to be super strict with it. Again, you're just planning it out. Let yourself be creative, basically. Something I need to clarify before we go into the finished results is that I actually made two El Museo del Niño's website redesigns. You'll notice that the wireframes mimic the first attempt more, but that's because the final result one, which is the one with the link in the chat, was more me editing atop of that. So I got more, now that I knew the ins and outs of Wix, I was like, okay, I know what I want to do more with it. So like I said here, this was my first attempt redesign, and this was the homepage actually. Like I said before, you can see the elements of the wireframes being put at work here. It's pretty self-explanatory. Also, something that I wanted you guys to notice is the fact that it's not a scroll. basically this was like it was just the homepage. And if you wanted to know more about us and the exhibitions and stuff like that, you'd have to press in the navigator and it would take you to a whole separate page. So if you wanted more information, it'd be like a whole other page. This is the final result one. So this is the one you guys can see in the chat. This is now more scroll down. So you can scroll down and you'll see the about and the exhibits. But this is the homepage. And I think it's much more simplistic, even compared to my first attempt. And it's what I really like. And I kept the hours of operation there because I do think it is important. And it just adds more like value and text into it. So this was my first attempt. Redesigned the About Us page. So again, this was its own page. And I felt like even in the original Museo del Nino website, there was just a lot of information that was a bit redundant. So in my final result one, I really just condensed it. I kept some of the same elements about my first attempt because I thought they worked out, but I just made it smaller because really they all just kind of said the same thing. For the exhibits, again, this was its own page. It was a bit more on the bland side. My first attempt, I felt. So with the final result, this is where MoMA came into place. I definitely had more fun with it. It's one of my favorite parts of my final result. I put in images from each of the exhibits that were there on like Museo del Nino, and I put little descriptions as well. So now we can go here. And now you guys can see it. As you can see, you can start scrolling down a bit more and you'll see the About Us. Oh, let me actually do it like this. Okay, so you press the About Us, boom. Love that little feature. You'll see it all. Then you scroll up a little bit and the navigator will pop up. You can go to the exhibits. And again, my favorite part, you see the physics and energy, arts and music, transport. There's a bunch of exhibits because they're meant to teach children and they're really interactive. They did list more exhibits in their original website, but I felt like some of them really could just be put in together. So it wouldn't seem too much, you know? And then we have the footer. So I didn't mention this in my presentation because it wasn't one of the main elements, but the footer in the first attempt was really large. And I'm glad I was able to like condense it more here because it does look like, and a footer should actually look like, it's just like basic information, the directions, the social media, and the logo. And if you press the logo, if you go here and you press the logo here, you should be taken right up. All righty. So that was me. Thank you guys so much. And now moving it on to the lovely Makenna.
Thank you, Tally. Trying to get into slideshow. Oh, excuse me one moment. There we go. All right, my name is Makenna Bryant, and I will be presenting a project redesigning a dance museum website to improve functionality, visual aesthetics, and audience engagement. So the museum I chose to redesign was the National Museum of Dance. It was founded in 1987 and is located in Saratoga Springs, New York. I chose this museum because I've been a dancer for 11 years, and so I felt a connection to it. And also, I was curious because I'd never heard of this museum before, and so I wanted to find out what it was about. Now, I was expecting to see a lot of color, photos of dancers, but I was a little underwhelmed when I saw the current design. Because as you see here, most of their imagery is based on the building itself. So it's saying what we look like, but not what really we do. And where they do mention what they do is like the little text they have, but the text is so small that you almost miss. I mean, I missed it on my first scroll through. So it needed to be bigger, more prominent. And also when they did have images like the last arrow on the bottom right, the images were just like one form of dance, ballet. But the museum claimed to be celebrating all forms of dance. So I was expecting to see more dancers and all different kinds of dances. So I did a little bit more digging, and I found the Facebook site for the museum, and these had the exhibitions, and this is what I more expected to see with a dance museum site. You see the costumes, the beautiful colors, and even the exhibits with the modern dance and Gregory Hines. You can see there's a TV down there where you can actually see the dancers moving around. This is more of what I expected to see with a dance site. And so this is what I wanted to aim for in my redesign. Now, I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, so I started looking at different museum designs, and I came across the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and I fell in love with this look. If you see the colors, it's a beautiful color scheme. They have animations, and the photos actually detail what the museum is about. And that's what I wanted to implement into my design. But before I could go about redesigning, I had to think about who is my audience. We didn't have time to do a demographic of our specific museum. We did get the information from museums as a whole. And so the demographics we found was age range 18 to 60, an income level of over $50,000, as you can see on the chart to the left. And because income is highly correlated with education, we can assume college educated. And the table to the right shows the biggest percentage is non-Hispanic white. So what this told me is it gave me a little bit more of why the museum chose the way they did, or at least I could assume why they chose the way they did. For the audience that they were looking for, highly educated, bigger income, the look of the museum, the building shows class and elegance, and that would appeal to that particular audience. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to expand the audience and be a little bit more inclusive. So looking at the purpose of the website itself, that's to encourage viewers to visit the museum. So like I said, the museum building would be very appealing to that specific exclusive audience, but I felt I was part of the target audience they were looking for, and the website wasn't engaging to me. And so what I thought is like, okay, what would appeal to me? And that's with the exhibits and the dancing being featured as well. So with that in mind, I began to make some changes to the original design. My first change was the color scheme. So I used a lot of blue and red because that's what I really saw in the exhibits. Those colors really stood out to me. And of all things, you actually see the blue more than the red because the blue I thought showed life and openness, and that really connects more with dance. You will also see a lot of movement in the site because I liked how they had the little the little TVs playing so you could actually watch dancers. And so I wanted that in the site. And of course, like I said, I wanted to be more inclusive. Different types of dance, different types of dancers. And I also wanted to make larger text, only because I felt like it was really important information, but because it was so small, it was easily missed. So with all this in mind, I began the redesign process, the first step being design a wireframe. Now, a wireframe is really just the original sketch of the site. It lets you get out on paper what you want to see before you put it into the computer. So you see here, I had a bunch of designs I could have possibly went with, but I decided on the first one because I felt like that was the one that really brought the site to life. So once I got that, my next step-by-step was designing the next wireframe, which was a digital version of it, and then finally the museum itself. I was a little proud. I ended up sticking with the design as I went along, and I was very happy with the way it turned out. So as you can see, this is going to be a comparison of the way the museum used to look and the way it looks now. I'll show you guys a little video for a moment. This is just a scroll through of the original before we look at my website. So as you can see a little bit what I was talking about earlier, where it's I felt that it was very exclusive for the audience. And so it was targeting, I think, at the audience they wanted to. I just wanted a little bit more. So looking at that, let's move on to the site. All right, so this was my redesign. So first things first, what I was trying to do was establish the visual hierarchy. Now, visual hierarchy is a designer's way of guiding the viewer's eyes throughout the page. Mine was more in a Z pattern, so I wanted to capture the attention with the movements, and especially promoting what the museum was all about. And it ended up guiding the eye to this location here, the plan your visit. So the planned visit is actually highlighted in red. Like I said, I use mainly blue throughout the site, so I wanted red to highlight the really important areas because that just makes it stand out. The museum is closed at the moment, so there's nothing really about the visiting pages because they're just letting you know, we're sorry, we're closed, but hopefully they will be opening again soon. And as you scroll throughout the site, I didn't want movement to just be in that first image. I want it to be throughout the site as you continue on, because that's really what dancing is. It's telling a story through movement. And I did keep the building design in there because I do realize that was important to them. I just didn't make it the main center of the design. I wanted to show the exhibitions because they're beautiful pieces like the Patricia Wilde exhibit and the Hall of Fame. I also wanted to portray the museum as a living museum because it doesn't just feature past exhibitions, it teaches dancers, so it's actually forming the future as well. But again, as you click on these to find out more, you'll see it takes you right back to this page. It's like, sorry, we're closed, but hopefully they will be open again soon, like I said. So there's About page, and what I decided to do here, I wanted to keep with that movement. I also wanted to highlight their mission. I thought their mission was so important: to celebrate, promote, and support all genres of dance while looking firmly ahead to cultivate new and diverse audiences, ensuring the future of this magnificent and essential art form. I kept a lot of the same text when I was describing the history. I just would separate them with images and lines to make it a little bit more easy to read. And if someone didn't want to read the full description, there's a visual tale of our history here at the bottom. It's a little video. It basically says the same exact thing that the history details, but you can watch it. I also designed an exhibition page because that was one factor I thought the museum was missing, where they didn't have a landing page for the exhibits. They just had where you could go to the exhibits themselves. And I wanted a chance for viewers to actually just see before they chose where they wanted to go. So this one just details all the way down to my favorite part, the Dancer Hall of Fame. And then you can also make a stop here just to look at the different exhibitions the museum has to offer and what it actually looks like inside the museum. Well, thank you guys for listening. I'm going to pass it on to Leticia.
Great job, Makenna. And I'll be sharing about my museum redesign. Okay. And so, hey everyone, good evening. My name is Leticia. And for my museum redesign, I decided to choose the Museum Oficina Brenna. So this is the museum I chose. I decided to choose this museum because it's located in Recife, a city that is in Brazil, which is where I'm originally from. And what was interesting to me is that most of my extended family lives in that region. And a fun fact is that Brazilian families are huge, and none of my 8 to 10 uncles had been to this museum or heard about it. And I didn't hear about it either. How I came across this museum was doing a Google search about like fun Brazilian museums, and I saw the beautiful photos of it. And after looking for the original website, then I realized why I had never heard of it before, because that's what the old website looked like. It didn't show the beautiful photos of the museum. It didn't have color to it. It just didn't attract me to want to go there. So it just seemed like no one was really taking care of it. So here we see that the original museum didn't have an easy way to navigate either, because the menu bar is so small, as you can see in this orange arrow right here. And it didn't talk a lot about the author, and it didn't even write down the location. It just showed this map for the location. So before even choosing the colors or the pictures that I wanted to go with my redesign, I needed to know who goes to Oficina Brenna. So based on their social media posts, I noticed that their visitors are very diverse. We see that kids will take field trips there and adults will go with their families or friends. But because for this design, we needed to focus on a group of people that we wanted to be the target audience, I decided to focus on adults and give the museum a more modern and colorful look to it. So Professor Put recommended that we find some websites for inspirations. And after searching through different museums, this is the website that caught my attention because it was so colorful and all the way that like the photos were displayed caught my attention. I decided to use it as an inspiration. Then I knew that the color palette would be very important, and I wanted my color palette to reflect what going to the museum would be like. So that's why I decided to go with blue. So you can see, because the museum is an outdoor museum, we see that the blue would remind people of the sky. Then most of this author's artwork is in ceramic. So normally they would have a brownish color. So I decided to go with browns and orange, and then the green because of the nature and the grass that you can see throughout the museum. So this is the progress I had to go through for the museum redesign. Here we have the sketches where I drew, just wanted to see where my images would be placed, where the logo would be placed. We see in pink here all the images that I was planning on doing. I had to do this multiple times until I came up with the final design. Here's also a digital first version of my sketch. And then I also decided to change the logo because the original logo was not placed with a good quality. And it also didn't reflect what I wanted this museum to reflect. So I went with a different color, different font, and also added a little bit of the nature into it. So here we have the old design homepage and then my design homepage. Now I'm going to take you guys to my website. 1 second. So I'm going to refresh the page too. Here we see the new web page. The first thing I wanted visitors to look at is the video because that was very important to me. I think the museum provides a unique experience because it's outdoors and it's very different. And then after looking at the video, which plays on for about 60 seconds, we have the logo up here. And as you scroll down, we have some of his artwork. He does both the ceramic and some paintings too. And some of them you can click and read more about the author too. Here we have even more about him. I wanted to put that in the very first page so people would get to know him because he is the reason why this museum exists. As you go up here, we have a whole page dedicated to him, his artwork, and his history. Unfortunately, most of you are not going to be able to read this because it is in Portuguese because that's my targeted audience, but it's just talking about him and the kind of art that he did and some of him too. Then we have more of his artwork. I also put the ceramic and the paintings. We can scroll down, see some more of it. Then it's very important for this museum that people donate, especially their taxes in Brazil, to it. So I did a whole page dedicated to it too. So people can understand why they should donate and how they can help the museum by donating to it. Here we have the whole information to go and visit there, the hours, the telephone if you need. There's also their social media and all these links you can click and they will take you to their actual social media. And here we're back to it. If you have time, you can go back and look at the video because it is a little bit long, but it's very interesting to see because it's such a beautiful and unique museum. But now we're gonna go to Brenna, who will be showing her personal work right now.
Thank you, Leticia. Let me share my screen. Hold on. Here we go. Let me get this into, if I can see, that would be helpful. All right, so hi, my name is Brenna Alford, and I will be presenting the final project for Professor Putt's class, Web Design 1. As professional art kind of moves towards digital media, I thought it was important to learn the digital skills I needed as a professional. So I used this project and Professor Putt's class to kind of expand the knowledge that I would learn and wanted to make a portfolio for both employers and friends alike to use and visit. And I'm going to explain to you the process that I went through for creating it. So if it will work. Okay, so my creative process always starts off with finding good inspiration. And these are two of the multitude of sites that I looked at when we were trying to figure out what kind of stuff inspires us and how we really want to like portray ourselves with these websites. So the website on the bottom left uses a more illustrative style where it looks more like it was done on paper, and the one on the top right looks like it's more like digitized and more crisp. And I kind of wanted to figure out a way to meld the two. And to do that, as an artist, you have to create a mood board. Pretty much what a mood board does, especially for me, is that it keeps my mindset really into what I'm creating. So if I step away from my project for a little bit, I can always like come back and acclimate myself with what my project is and what I need to keep doing it. And these were the two, I guess, pictures and boards that I created to really like get myself into wanting to do my project. Moving on, we have my wireframe sketches, and as you can see, there's a multitude of them here. And they're really kind of like a storyboard of a website. They kind of like give you the bare bones of what your website is. And I ended up actually using a couple of my designs to create my final wireframe sketch, which was this design right here, where I had my logo in the top left corner and then a navigation bar across the top, and then a big kind of hero image, which is a kind of like, it's when you look on a, it's when you first open a site and you see a really big image, that's it, like catches your attention. And so that's what I wanted to use. And after I figured out that this was the sketch that I wanted to use, I moved on to what is called a high fidelity wireframe. And that is where what you pretty much do is you digitize all of your sketches and you make it so you have more pages of your website and not just the home page. And you use your actual images that you're going to include on the site so you can really, really see how everything is going to work out. So I included all of my navigation icons and my logo and my images, and I made sure that I knew which page I was on when I was including them, as you can see with the like red circles. Next, I'm actually going to talk about my process for creating my icons, my logo. So this is my logo that is on my website, and it really is something that I used to doodle a lot when I was in middle school. So when I was making my website, I really wanted to reconnect with how and like where I started as an artist, and the D and F letters are actually for my Instagram handle, which is also what my website is based off of. And then my navigation bar is a bunch of different little icons that I thought really represented me in my art. So the first one on the very left is anatomy, and I used a tooth because when I was in high school, I had a really fun time drawing teeth in a jar, crazily enough. And so I really wanted to kind of delve in deeper into creating it. And fantasy, I based it off of crystals because I really like crystals. Realism, I drew a mushroom because I really am into that cottagecore aesthetic. And then digital, I used my glasses because, you know, you're staring at your screen all day. And then for my bio, I went back again to middle school when I used to draw eyes on all of my assignments and added lavender, which is my favorite flower, to kind of give a round like whole experience. And then next, we're going to move on to the hero image that's on the homepage of my website, which is my animation. This was my first time attempting animation, and I'm really happy with how it turned out for the amount of time I put into it, because I know animation like takes a lot of time. I spent about 4 hours on this animation piece, because then again, I was just animating the eyes blinking, which I thought was really awesome at the time. And I hope to continue developing my website in a way that I can improve upon my skills and show them off. And this also shows how versatile, I guess, my art is and how much I can do for people who are interested and find my website. Next, we're actually going to go over the whole desktop site. So these are some screenshots of my website with the homepage in the top left and one of the pages or one of the icon pages in the bottom right. These show some of my art, and that's the homepage. And then the next 2 pages are the digital page, which has coming soon on it, as I haven't uploaded anything yet, but I'm planning to in the future as I continue to take classes at Oglethorpe and in grad school. And then I've also included a picture of my biography page. And then we also have a mobile site because for Professor's Putz class, we were required to create a mobile site. And I also think it's really important as a web designer and an artist to really focus on how people are going to view your art. And because many of you are on your phones or use your phones to look up things a lot more often than a computer, I thought it was really important to include all of the mobile kind of aspects. So, and it was really interesting to try and figure out, oh, this doesn't work the same as it does online. And oh, like I need to make sure that this still works and that they still look nice and that everything is mapped out correctly. So I was really happy to really find a design that I really could settle on and that looked how I wanted it to. And then I'm also included the coming soon page again, and then my contact page, which is how people contact me. Hopefully if they look at my portfolio site and are like, hey, I want to buy something from you, and all that jazz and whatnot. Next, we're going to go look at my website, which is draconianfairy.com, as that is my Instagram handle. And of course, it pulls it up again. But this is my website. It's awesome, in my opinion. And I worked really hard on it. And the homepage has the animation with a little bit of extra coloring that I included to kind of have it stand out off the background. And then my Instagram and handle at the bottom. And then you can actually roll over all of these icons and it'll pop up which is which. And then a fun thing that I included with my animation is that if you click on it, it takes you to my biography page where you can then contact me or you can read my little artist statement. And you can click on anatomy, fantasy, realism, or digital, and digital is the one that is coming soon, so that is included there. And then anatomy, which is some work from high school and some work from Oglethorpe. This is a piece that I actually did at Oglethorpe, and you can click on it and it pops it up and will tell you the title, when I did it, and what medium it's in. So if any of you are interested in sticking around and looking at it, I would enjoy it. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed all of our websites. We all spent a really long time working on it and perfecting them for LASS and not only our classes. And we were really happy to have you guys here today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Great job, everyone. That was fantastic. Lovely websites, great presentations. We have a few minutes for questions. If anyone has questions about how these websites were designed or the process, etc., feel free to use the raise hand function, or you can just jump on and ask. You can also type it in the chat. Leah, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I loved learning that process. Instead of just showing us your website, I absolutely loved learning the process. And as a biologist, I was connecting so many things in the process. So I have two questions. One is how many of those drawing sketches do you go through typically? I know it's hard when you show your final product and you're like, these people have no idea how many I've done. So I'm interested in how many of the hand sketches you guys do. I appreciate that it's on hand. My other question was about the scrolling website versus one that you would click on that brings you to a new page. So I guess one's about process and one's about kind of what makes you determine that final product, how that's designed. And that's for anyone.
I'll jump and answer about the process just because Professor Put did require us to have 10 sketches. And I looked at it as a student and I was like, oh, that's too many. I'm not going to need it. And then I ended up doing like 50 probably because you draw it and you're like, that doesn't really look that good. So you start doing so many that I think I ended up with probably 35, but they were all very small and very quick. None of them, like just the ones that I turned in were with like the highlight and the colors, but the ones that I have for myself are just a mess.
I had the same process as Leticia. Like you kind of go through a lot of different ideas because what it is, are the little like sketches that you do, like they're really no bigger than a thumbnail sketch. Like, so they're like really tiny, no bigger than your thumb. And you kind of go through as many as you can to get as many ideas out until, so you have one that you're really confident that's going to work, which sometimes it happens with a lot shorter and sometimes it takes a lot longer. And then for your other question, for scrolling or just clicking, sometimes it just depends on what your audience is and if they're more inclined to click on things or if you're more inclined to just have them scroll. And one of the cool things about Wix and our and how we use that for web design is that there's a lot of different like animations and things that you could see like on Makenna's site, or where in my site, like I did have scrolling, but that's just because I didn't want to have like excess amounts of pages. So you could still like click on things, but scrolling like with animations, it makes it more visually interesting, especially for people who generally just go to a site and then just doom scroll. It's kind of like it's kind of whether or not you want to be clicking on something or you want to be doom scrolling on something, like, which is how it kind of works for social medias and stuff too. And we learned a lot about that in web design.
So for the process, you guys talked about sketches. For me, sketching is really, let me not say hard, but it's like I have a weird relationship with it because sometimes when I sketch it out and then I put it into place, I'm like, okay, I think this would look better here. Oh, here, oh, here. I start playing around with it more. And I end up sometimes with a result that isn't even my original sketch, which is kind of the point. But I feel like something that does help me a lot are the mood boards. Mood boards is something I didn't even think would help me that much, but they really do because it helps see like the type of text you're going to put, what types of images you're going to like, the whole aesthetic and vibe for like the website. You kind of like, okay, if my website's going to be softer, these are the elements I should put into it. This is how my sketch should look like. So I base a lot of my like design elements on like what I put in mood boards, and I do multiple mood boards. And I feel like each page, if you do pages, should have a mood board because it really does help set the tone of what you're going to put in that certain page. And for the scroll, I originally just had like my first attempt was just going to be click, but I felt like that wasn't interactive enough for like a children's museum type website. So that's why I just decided to change it to like a scroll feature. But you do have to be careful though that you don't make it super long either, because then that's just going to tire out the viewer. So you do want to find like a good balance with that. Oh, someone asked a question. So we do it on Canvas, basically. They have like the best types. I found it really easy to manage on my computer and stuff, and they're just really useful. And if you have Canva Pro, you are one step ahead of the game on that.
There is still a lot you can do without Canva Pro, especially if you're a poor artist and can't afford to pay for subscription or subscription memberships and stuff like that. So like, even if you have to work within a little bit of limitation, but it's a really good practice to kind of get your creative processes out on something just so you have it.
Alan, do you have a question, Professor Lowell?
Yeah, well, first, I'm really impressed with all of y'all, the thoroughness with which you approach this, and among other things, right, first and foremost, that you treat it fundamentally as a communication medium. And it's not a static entity that's just throwing information out there, but it's a matter of who that y'all consider who you're talking to, and like the age, whether it's a children's museum or a museum in Brazil that, you know, that is underappreciated or underseen or underrepresented on the web, that you took a big picture approach, but then you broke it down into all these specific variables. And so I'm very impressed at what everybody did. And I also have a question about how many, are some of y'all from majors other than art? My suspicion is that you are. What are your majors?
I'm a business major, so this is very different from what I usually do.
Fantastic.
I'm also a business major, and this was my first web design class, so it was a little bit scary to create something like that.
Well, and you're both business? That is fantastic, because Aaron and I think will agree that we want students from other disciplines to take a course like this. So it's fantastic. And
sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and you came out fine. You didn't have to be an art major. You had to think of design principles, but
I'm also a double major in business and communication. So you got 3 business majors here.
Wow, fantastic. And so ultimately, though, you all harnessed the elements of design to do this. Well done. And I learned a lot about web design, I got to tell you.
I am the sole studio art major.
How about that?
And I really loved putting together my portfolio, and it's really interesting to like look at it and seeing like other people and put their design in practice. Like, so it's really great. I was so excited to see your guys' websites too.
Yes.
It was really cool to see how different everybody thinks and how different like you can put stuff together, because there's sometimes like, as a studio art major, there's sometimes things that I don't see, but a business major or a science major will see that like it goes straight over my head.
Well, I was very impressed, y'all. Thank you.
I have a question for you all quickly. What did you learn? Well, actually, how did the redesigning of the museum website and the design of your personal websites change how you experience the internet and websites that you visit?
I will sit through any website now and be like, oh, they should change this. Oh, this does not function well. So it changed a lot how I view websites now.
Oh, definitely. I will never be able to look at a website the same because I have done that where I've just looked at one. I'm like, oh, no, she should put that there. And I find myself like, okay, don't be judgy. But especially, I love that being business majors, I feel like it really plays into it because now we're also thinking the marketing mindset, like, oh, it's a good design, but this would be better for this audience. So it's just really helped with that.
For me, and now now that I know the process that goes into making a website, I'm like, okay, how did they reach this conclusion? Because I know all the steps is like, how were their mood boards? How were their like sketches, their wireframes? Like, how did we get here? How many tries did it take? Was this the original one? Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm much more interested in the process that they went to get there. And like, obviously this is more professional. Some websites are professional. They hire coders and stuff. So it makes it seem I have a greater appreciation for it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I really do like I notice things, and whenever I see like interactive features and stuff, I'm like, eh.
I definitely agree with that. It's really interesting because like I did come into the class like wanting to learn code a little bit, but like I think breaking it down into the different sections, because there are two different sections of web design. There's the more visual and then there's the more I guess strict, and it's very, or coding I think is very rigid in comparison. But I think it's very interesting to see like how they combine together. And I do think of websites really critically. When I worked as a copy editor, like I got really critical of everything that I read. And so it's really interesting to see like kind of like how to balance it out and be like, oh, I see that this is wrong, but am I actually going to email the person and tell them that it's wrong? Probably not. But it's still fun to like notice it and be like, oh, I can use this in my websites, or I can use this in my design, and still like work on it that way.
Oh, real quick, we have a question in the chat. First off, also thank you, Angela, so much. And Leah asks, seems this process is very data driven with respect to the audience. How does that compare and contrast with a personal website? So I feel like Brenna can answer this pretty well, given she's actually finished hers. But from what I'm picking up, really, for a personal website, it depends what it's about. So if it's your portfolio, if it's a blog, it still kind of is audience dependent, but you do get more creative liberty on it, given that it's your type of brand and you are marketing yourself, you know? So it really depends, and you still have to base it off of an audience, but you do get more like creative liberty with what elements you get to choose in the design.
Yeah, as someone who has done both, because I took Professor Putt's class over J-term, so I don't know if you guys are in it right now, but pretty much designing the museum website I think is a little more difficult, I think, than actually doing your personal website, because instead of representing yourself, you're representing an entire brand, an entire company that's not your own. And I thought it was really interesting because like I did Monet's Gardens in Giverny because it was a museum that I really enjoyed, or I guess a garden that I really enjoyed going to when I was younger. And I thought it was really interesting, like how old some websites are and how difficult it is to give something a brand when it doesn't really have one. And you're trying to give it an image that like, it is this really cool place, but like the way they're presenting themselves is like it just didn't look like they had like the budget to really give themselves that outreach. And it's really interesting to kind of do that and figure out the best way to do that for something that's not yourself.
Good point.
Anybody else want to answer briefly before we wrap up about audience?
We are still taking his course right now, me, Tally, and Makenna. So we haven't got to do the personal website. That's our next project. So we're going to see how that's going to play. But I'm sure it's going to be different because we don't have a brand. It's ourselves. It's our own website. So we get to pick a little bit more who the audience is going to be and what we want it to look like and play around a little more too.
I look forward to seeing those.
Well, and the reality is that the audience, since we're not collecting a lot of data as to who's actually visiting these websites, we're inevitably making some assumptions about who the audience is, but then applying design to those assumptions. Well, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Very much appreciated. Thank you to the presenters. Fantastic job. Great job on your presentations. Great job on your websites. Thank you again. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day.